It says live now in the corner.
Cool. All right, so UI meeting for October 19th. I was figuring that little link would be like, oh, everyone, because then I get to set up a weekly thing and have it always there, but I just have to send out these links individually. Okay, so let's start off. How do you want to do this? You want to start with the show and tells, discussions?
Well, let's make sure all of our follow-on work is done, and then then we can know what we can clean up. So.
Okay. Single gulp dev watcher. How's that going, John?
What are we doing?
Sorry. We're just taking a look at it. Let me present here. Sorry. It used to be Chrome crashed. Okay, there we go. I'm just going to take a look at the follow-on work. See if we need.
Oh, yeah, no, I haven't had a chance to.
Okay.
On that.
No worries.
Yeah, let's actually for that one, we should probably go ahead and put that one on hold, since one of the goals of the next release or two is to combine the UI repositories together. So it will be kind of a moot issue. Spending time and energy on this now is probably not going to be too worthwhile at this point.
So let's just comment on this and work at it. This is actually basically just becoming moot. Yeah, okay.
I guess. All right, tool for more granular watcher debugging.
I haven't made any progress on this, but I don't know if Adrian has.
Yeah, so that piece of code in that screenshot, that's already merged with the merge of the branding work. So for now, it only allows you to toggle the ng stats on and off. I guess in the future, when we're going to add other tools, that cookie can be renamed to something more generic. So that's what we have for now.
Yeah, I saw this. Thanks for doing that, Adrian. I'm just noticing that it's inside of another choose. So it looks like you need to have both the one dev cookie and the ng-stats cookie. Is that not the case, or is that the case?
Yeah, I don't think you'll need that ng-stats outside of the dev cookie.
So you need both cookies to
because you're going to. Yeah, you need both cookies in this case.
Okay. So thank you for doing that, because I hated that thing.
Yeah, no worries. I hate it too.
So this is in because it was Brandon's been merged.
Yeah. So this is it for now. We can revisit it as soon as we add new tools to our development. But for now, it just does its job.
Okay. Thank you. Update the Yeoman generator to align with our current standards and best practices. Yeah, I don't think we've made much progress on this.
I'm almost wondering if, I mean, is it still worthwhile to pursue, or?
At this point, I
don't think anybody's using it. We haven't been using it.
Yeah, I think the last time we brought this up, we pursued this a few times. The last time it was brought up, it was like, well, if it's still not done, next time we run across it, and there hasn't really been any energy towards it, it's probably deemed something that is not really being used and is likely more work than the beneficial.
Fair enough.
Agreed.
I'd be happy to can it. Had a troubled history. I'm not sure how much we've really taken advantage of it, and we're certainly not maintaining it.
Can you?
How you join us in the conference room?
Thanks, Pat. Yeah, we're getting a lot of feedback from your mic, Pat. But we still love you.
Yep. I'll be right there.
Wait. Before you close it, go back to it. Can you just open that link and closes won't fix? Oh, I guess you can't. All right, never mind. Whatever.
Can we delete
You have to move through the whole.
the whole process?
Yeah, so forget it. That's too much effort.
Let me just make a comment.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Still lost that. Yeah, somewhere.
They're beep, beep, and like somebody else was talking who actually sounded louder than you did. So I was like,
It may have not been using the mic on my headset, but it doesn't matter. Here now.
Vocals.
I think this one's technically done. So basically discuss our module loaded pattern with respect to loading components actions. Currently quite a bit of boilerplate that controllers need to consistently define. Looks like Jake, you created a tech deck to address this. So it's in there.
Yep.
It's still dependent upon that.
Doesn't really.
It doesn't have to, but it's more like, it should be like, it relates to, it's probably a better classification.
Can I change that?
You can delete it on the right. They tried.
One thing I would say though is that this spike is probably, well, I suppose it could probably be done in parallel with some of the other consolidation work.
I look forward to that when you do that.
Module. Yeah, I've been considering a couple different approaches. Right now, I'm kind of wondering if, because we ran into a thing with JT's upgrade of Angular, we also wanted to turn off that like debug mode to put it in production mode.
Yeah.
But that takes away jQlite.scope, which the module loader explicitly uses to be able to figure out what scope to bind where. So, you know, from a production perspective, our module loader is, it certainly is very functional, but it may not ultimately be where we want to go. So I'm looking at options of how easy is it to set up like UI router with lazy loading of modules. I took a quick analysis to see what it would, you know, if we just loaded all the code, like, is it really worth us lazy loading and jumping through all these hoops? It is. We do have, especially in some cases, like journeys is a pretty big chunk of code. Expression editor is a big chunk of code. Those areas really need lazy loading. So I'm kind of experimenting with UI routing and lazy loading on my own just to see what can be done, if that can be simplified. And the other option is move towards Webpack, which has kind of just built-in asynchronous requesting. So like when you need a file and it's not in the bundle that is currently loaded, it just loads that bundle in the background and goes ahead and pulls it in. So that's a much more complex thing to maintain and set up just because of the density of Webpack. But looking for some options here.
I have two comments to that. One, since they relate and you're kind of already looking at this, do you mind taking it as assigned to you so that when you're ready, you can groom it and move it from ready to estimation?
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, it kind of feels like I'm doing a spike for a spike. I'm kind of informally thinking about this stuff right now, but
Well, yeah, I'm just saying, if you feel it's not worth it, close it out and do whatever.
yeah, I'd be happy to put it on my plate unless anybody else has some strong ideas or opinions of how to approach this.
Well, that leads me to my second comment. Angular 2, I know we aren't there yet. It's on our minds though.
Yep.
They definitely do lazy loading of everything now with their UI router.
Yeah,
So
it's built in. and it's not one. I think that's the real challenge. So, but yeah, there is, either way, that direction I think is where we want to be looking. I think we want to move away from having a custom solution and doing something a little more standard, that when we do get to, you know, having native support for this type of thing, it's a pretty easy, you know, delete this kind of custom block of code and just keep the UI router config the way it is with whatever it needs to do the async stuff.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're already considering it. That was my only thing, is just, you know, consider the fact that that's probably going to come, you know, when we get to Angular 2. So.
Can I ask
Yep.
why did they, you know the history of why they went custom to the module?
So when this application was built, I think Angular 1.0 wasn't yet ready. And honestly, even to this day, 1.5 does not natively support lazy loading modules.
Okay.
You have to kind of jump through some hoops to do that. And a lot of what I've seen in our module loader is similar to some of the kind of blog patterns that people were proposing in like 2013. So in a lot of ways, I mean, this module loader dates back like 3 or 4 years and is just really early Angular, and it's been upgraded a little bit since then to kind of simplify some things, but it's still, there's a lot going on. So
But even like way back, we were doing, we used required to actually do our module. I mean, we weren't doing Angular, we were doing Backbone.
yeah,
But I was just like, came here, I was like, it's an interesting way of managing modules.
yeah.
But I guess I didn't realize that Angular really didn't, out of the box, come with something to do it until 2 at this point.
Yeah, it doesn't, and I know at the time the devs that were here were not a big fan of Require, which if we were stuck with Require right now, I think we'd be feeling those pains. So there's, you know, it's a double-edged sword. At the time, it was definitely a solution, and honestly, it still works. So it hasn't needed much maintenance from one upgrade to another. I think the biggest time we touched it was to make sure that modules could be directives at the top level and not just like a controller wrapper. And even then, that only took 3 lines of code to make sure that the scope inheritance was right. But yeah, so but we should be moving towards something more native. And I've been trying to find information. It seems like a lot of people haven't talked about this since 2013, and that makes me think that a lot of people just were like, "Oh, Webpack, this solves all our problems," and just moved over to it. But
Well, now that Angular 2 is, you know, using a lot of Webpack for a lot of the builds, it probably makes sense. They probably took cues from Webpack in the community and built it into Router.
yeah, exactly. I'm going to keep digging. If anybody else comes across anything and has some ideas on this front, definitely bring them forward, because it doesn't look like Angular 1 has a clean and simple solution, but I think certainly we can reduce the boilerplate.
Cool.
Last one was animate. And how do you feel about
So this one, at least the investigation, I didn't do any because we were going to upgrade the exports list to the new Uber list. So at this point, I think we need to check if it's still a need for one animate with the new list in place.
Yeah, I mean, right now there is no animation with the new export list, but as far as I could tell, it doesn't seem to be that huge of a deal. This has been kind of a continually plaguing problem, and the guy that kind of envisioned this kind of animation in that list isn't here anymore. So I'm wondering if we probably just want to check in with Mark and or Travis and be like, does this look okay the way it is, or do we need animation here?
Well, they're in the office. Let's have that conversation.
Is Mark here?
Marcus?
Oh, Travis.
Oh,
Travis.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You said they, and then I got all excited. I don't think Mark likes coming to the States.
Can't drink enough.
Okay. All right.
Actually, on the other side of that follow-on work, there is a question of anytime we go ahead and create a component or create an entity, would we want that entity to be animated in on the lists? And I'm not sure how easily that would be done. But
Let's say that again.
like when you create a new
Might be a nice
entity,
feature to have though.
yeah, I mean, like, you know, we technically, we load the list, we go ahead and press create.
Mhm.
You know, that list can stay, we go ahead and create it, and then we can just append that, and that could animate in. That could be a whole, like, a follow-on,
Oh, okay.
small follow-on feature. At least then, like, if we're gonna go through the pain of doing it, we can make it something that's consistent across the board, which is part of this list work effort anyway. But
Is the new Uber list appending items or just re-rendering the whole list?
no, it's just re-rendering the whole list, and I think that's fundamentally the issue here. You know, it's ng repeat though. If we're using track by properly, then even if we grab the whole new set of data and dump that into into whatever we're ng repeating on, we'll still be able to get the animate in and animate out for things that are new and not. So even if we are doing a full re-render, ng repeat with track by and ng animate will support whatever's new, being the only things that get the animation.
Would that be weird with pagination?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it does open a whole can of worms.
Yeah.
So I mean, like my instinct is kind of like I looked at it yesterday. I was like, oh yeah, this doesn't animate anymore. It looks fine. I don't know. It's like it's very functional. You can see where the new item goes because the list is updated. But I have kind of a hard time as to like evaluating the return on investment for something like this. It just seems like a lot of pain for very minimal return. Maybe one way when we have nothing else to do and we just really want to polish this thing and make it look as slick as anything, and we can add pink unicorns and rainbows and stuff.
I guess either way, we'll leave this here. I'll have a chat with Travis, figure out if they really want any sort of animations. If not,
I think it's a thing of consistency as well. If we add it for the exports, then it has to be available for all the lists. But
Yeah, that's kind of that's my instinct as well.
Okay, show and tells, team discussions. You know, I guess we have half an hour. I'm not sure if we're able to get through all of this stuff. Is there any show and tells that are pressing that really want to get done?
The Lodash upgrade stuff, I think, is something that is pressing. I'm mid-stride on it, and there's a lot of new work going in ahead of this.
Okay.
And I wouldn't mind spending 5 or 10 minutes and just going over the list of new things. Would you mind popping open the Lodash story, which 1131?
A 211. 1131.
All right, so I put the what I found here in the description. Just a real quick couple things that were deprecated and a couple things that were shifted. If we're still using Lodash 3, there are some of these things that can't be done, but just want to make you guys aware as when Lodash 4 does get in, all of a sudden this stuff will have to be shifted. So index by still exists in Lodash 4. It doesn't do what it used to do. It's now key by. The same functionality in index by in version 3 is now key by. Obviously contains was renamed to includes. That exists in Lodash 3, so we should always be using Lodash includes for checking if a key exists within an array. So this next one, the sum, was split into sum and sum by, and this happened with a lot of methods. Anything that can take that kind of does stuff just out of the box by itself, or could take a function to like iterate and do and work over the array that you give it has been split out into the function and then the function by. So if you have a custom iterate, you need to use sum by, and that's also the same for unique by, omit by, pick by, all of that stuff. If you're just using like properties or whatever the unique does by default, you don't need the by, but they are two different methods now. And I think some of that was for optimizing the size of the library. So all the kind of by iterate type functions can share a common base, and then the simplicity of unique by and pick by, or unique pick, sum, all of that stuff can be compressed without having to check all of that if it's an iterate or if it's just a string of properties now. So that was a big one. That was the majority of minor changes that I needed to do were these functions that were split into a by function. Zip object, if you were using it before, zip object used to be able to take an array of arrays. Now it just takes two arrays. If you want to use an array of arrays, you have to use from pairs. So if you're using zip object anywhere, we use it in a few random places. If we're using ES6, zip object is almost moot. ES6 is really easy because you got, mostly where I've been using zip object is where I need variable property keys bound to known values. And ES6 just gives us that with the, I don't even know what it's called, but you can use
array literal.
Say again?
The shorthand array literal?
No, so you can like declare an object and the key can be in square brackets.
Oh,
And so it can be a variable key. It doesn't have to be just an explicit key name. But in ES5, Lodash makes that kind of easy with zip object. Just be aware that it's now just two arrays. So you can put the property as the first array and then the value as the second array. Map and remove and a couple of those other iterative functions used to take a context argument of this as the third argument, kind of like the native ones do. For some reason, they don't anymore. I don't know. I don't really know why they removed it, but if we need to use this within a map function, we just have to use bind on the function itself. So the second argument would take bind this rather than the third argument just being this. It's kind of a surprise because this is actually a shift away from kind of the native code, but it may be in preparation of Lambda fat arrow functions. So. Invoke, which we use a lot when we're using any kind of pub sub type thing. Invoke is now called invoke map. Invoke still exists. It does just one invocation though, whereas invoke map will do basically a whole collection of functions, and we'll go ahead and execute that whole array. So just watch that. Can't really change that in Lodash 3 though, because invoke does what it does. Rest is now tail. Similarly, first is now head. Those things are available in Lodash 3, but are formally, the aliases have been removed in Lodash 4. So we should be using the recommended aliases from 3, and those will stay in place for 4. Trim left and trim right are now trim start and end. They're just kind of ironing out some of that kind of crap. Chaining got weird. For some reason, there are some methods in chains now that are considered hard stops where you don't actually need to call value on. But what that seems to do is that you can't actually keep chaining from there. So a for each would be like the end of the chain. At that point, it just blows up. My takeaway from it is just don't use chaining. Use flow, use any other kind of combination of things, but chaining seems to be something that they're moving away from. They're trying to simplify it a little bit, but at the same time, they're making really long chains hard to do because of these kind of random hard stops now. So for each, it used to pass through and you could call value and get the result of your chain. Now, if you just call for each, it returns the value of your chain. automatically. So if you chain anything else onto that, it kind of breaks down. Just watch that. So if you find yourself wanting to do chaining, maybe functional composition is a better approach. Capitalize is weird now. Capitalize sets the first letter to uppercase and the rest to lowercase. I think it used to set the first letter of each word. I don't know. Start case is the one that sets the first letter of each word. And it seems like there's a subtle shift in there. You may want start case if you want every word to be capitalized. Also, capitalize now does think strip away special characters where it used to not. So it's like snake case and all of the other, or maybe start case is the one that does that. Anyway, just watch the capitalize and start case stuff. If you find yourself using those, just double check the docs there. Sorry, I don't have better details there. Pluck's officially gone. We've been talking about that for a while. Just use map instead. It's a one-for-one replacement.
Map's already there, right?
Yep. And find where doesn't exist anymore. That one got just merged down into find. So if you're using find where, when we upgrade, we'll have to just use find where doesn't exist anymore. But everything else there is just that there's now pick and pick by, there's unique and unique by, omit by, remove by. There's all these iterative functions. So these were the things that I actually explicitly found in our code. There are a number of other changes. The change log is quite extensive, but these seem to be the things that we so I just wanted to bring them up. But we all had a little bit of a heads up on it. The Lodash story has been mostly completed. Right now it's put on hold. We're just waiting to be able to get access to platform to be able to do that side of things, and then it's going to be merged in. So it could be as soon as the end of the week, but sometime next week or the week after. But it's coming soon.
Thank you.
Yep.
The validate POC, I don't think, unless you guys want to demo it, we actually already have it done. We have I took the POC, did the implementation, and we have a story in the backlog already to use it to replace bugs, to fix in the places where we have bugs. So I guess we're just going to have it in the style guides. Unless you guys want to go over it, we can just get rid of that demo.
Good. And I think if we did want to demo, we could demo the actual component now that we have.
Yeah, like, so if you guys want to see it, I mean, it's pretty easy to understand. It's not too much different.
Yep.
As far as implementation is concerned.
All right. Is there any October 12th? This is recent conversations.
Yeah, so I think Adrian just responded to me. There are Angular 2 upgrade guides out there, and there are some tools out there. Adrian is just saying that he feels we need our own custom thing. So it sounds like we maybe need to have some people sit down and decide, what we want to do for an upgrade path, and maybe start the ball rolling. Adrian, do you have any more to say on that?
Yeah, I also think I was confusing the 1.5 upgrade with this one. But yeah, definitely a guide should be good for our development.
Okay.
I mean,
So, I don't think there's too much takeaway from this. It's just more of like, maybe in the back of our heads, we should all start thinking about who we want to take this as a way to look at how our current architecture fits in. But it sounds like we have some stuff in flux with module loading, so maybe let's revisit this later.
Yeah, I mean, just as a general consensus, would we prefer to be moving to ES6 or moving to Angular 2 sooner?
I had ES6 on the list. I'd rather get to ES6.
Someone else wrong with that? I agree. Yeah. I agree as well. Angular 2 is mostly important for those teams that need an application that can be cross platforms in a more native way. And so I think the urgency there is a little less significant for us right now. But,
And when we go to Angular 2, we would say JavaScript, or we go to TypeScript? Hypothetically speaking. We say JavaScript.
whatever we want to do.
Okay. I only bring it up because we're gonna take the time to go to ES6.
Right. Yeah, I mean, TypeScript is really just kind of decorated ES6 anyway.
Okay.
I know some people had concern about TypeScript not even supporting the next level of like the ES7 spec. But now apparently the most recent TypeScript updates are really starting to push forward. So they're staying fairly close together, and then obviously TypeScript just adds the decorations.
It's one step closer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really what I'm trying to get at. So that's
It might be a little less shell shock too if we all get really comfortable with ES6 and then move over to TypeScript.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. I feel like we should be slowly graduating to those things, so we all get used to what ES6 does versus what TypeScript does. So the only thing that's annoying about Angular 2 is that all the documentation is in TypeScript. It's not in even native ES6, so.
Yeah, kind of pigeonholes using TypeScript unless they decide to update their docs and stop treating JS as a second-class citizen. But
Say it again?
I was just going to say, yeah, it sort of pigeonholes you into using TypeScript unless they decide to update their documentation to support.
I don't think they're going to. Misko loves types too.
Too much work for them. So.
So yeah, I wrote this one. Do you guys want to do this? It sounds like yes. Be something I'd appreciate getting in there.
Have at it.
Okay. I'll write up a TD and get it prioritized then.
Okay.
Can you assign me to that card?
Sure.
Thanks. One other question on it. I know Babel supports ES6, but it also supports ES7, and I kind of like destructuring. I don't know if we would want to go to ES7.
We want to go as far forward as possible.
Okay.
Because yes, destructuring is fantastic.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It has always kind of surprised me because I started with PHP, and we basically PHP had destructuring of a sort kind of built in from a very early version.
Yeah.
My move over to JavaScript has always kind of baffled me why we're missing that, because otherwise they're very, very similar languages. That one bit really changes things.
The other one, to be a quick question, is the one right below it, removing Bower.
Oops, sorry.
Yes.
Anybody opposed?
No.
Okay, assign that to me too. I'll write up a spike. The only reason I say spike is because there are some things that we do with moving Bower components around.
Yep. The hardest part of what you're going to run into is there are some bits of Redux that weren't available in NPM at the time.
Okay.
And the whole damn React library, which we're not doing. So Bower at least gives us the ability to pull from a Git remote directly. And I think NPM now does as well. At the time, I don't think they did. So,
okay.
But just watch that. That's probably the only real catch in this task.
Okay, I'll write that spike up, and I might just do it depending on what happens. So.
Cool. Yeah, with the Lodash upgrade, I moved Lodash to NPM already.
Okay.
It was just easier.
Yeah. The other one I had is just a note. I think I set it out in the UI team there, but that big long one right above this one, Colin. So there's two takeaways in this. The main takeaway, which is on the actual card itself, which is when you're writing tests, Angular Mocks does a full life cycle of Angular. So that means it calls, from on init all the way to on destroy after each spec. So if you don't fully hydrate your mocks, your tests won't work. I fixed the majority of them now in the Angular upgrade. Just going forward, if you do anything, just make sure you're aware of that when you're going through it. The other aspect of this is that we do have lifecycle hooks. And so you may see a subtle difference in rendering and how things are done. So keep an eye on that. We saw it on the Angular upgrade. Things are just a tad slower with how we're doing things. And the automation is catching that. So those are real quick things. But basically, just make sure you mock out everything before you start writing your specs.
Yeah, I mean, and as part of this, this will aid when we go to the module loading. We should start considering converting our modules over to components. That's probably the first and best use case for components. Our directives should probably stay directives, but the actual top level module should probably be invoked as components moving forward.
I think that can be covered under the next card, then discuss best practices for 1.5.
Yeah.
Cool. Is there any other small ones on the list?
Discussed it. Is there much to discuss on this one?
No, there's an epic that was created with a handful of subtasks. The first one's already done. The adaptive UI is gone. And the rest of it is just waiting to be groomed. And essentially, we're going to be moving the projects over one at a time. They will be siblings of each other within the one repo. And then the kind of back half of the stories will be to merge then one of those projects at a time to become one full kind of Maven build POM project. And then the final bit to that is then just extracting the components library out to an NPM managed components library, which the application for that will be the style guide. So it's kind of a 3-phase thing, and all of it is ready for estimation, but none of it has been prioritized yet, except that one bit that we were backing up because it was easy.
So we're moving them into a new repo called One?
No. We're moving it to the existing One UI repo.
Okay, gotcha.
And this will eliminate a lot of the stuff with the inconsistencies between CatchBuster, some duplicate code, all of the kind of manual transferring of one components into each of the UI projects, and should help us kind of highlight and remove any circular dependencies that we may have across projects right now. So there's a lot of benefit. It'll take a little bit of time, but we'll kind of do it piecemeal and should be able to get there within a release or two.
Nice.
Fantastic.
Servers will be easier, dev will be easier, builds will be easier.
Okay.
So, I mean, minus the module loading bit, is this used anywhere else in the code base?
The JQLite.
Yeah, JT, I don't know where else you ran across this.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, I only I found, so scroll down a little bit. I think there's some attachments. I checked in analytics, there was none. There was some in THX, nothing in Tagger. So one is One UI, and then one is, yeah, so One UI has those two.
One of those is Bower, is coming from Bower, so.
Yep. And then this one was the expression editor. Yeah.
Huh.
Okay.
So this is just a small TD to go remove those and refactor them so that they're working with their appropriate, QA and everything.
I wouldn't necessarily say that's a small TD, just a heads up.
I didn't say it was small. I just meant like the acceptance criteria is tiny.
Small s. Small s.
Yeah, so basically that's the TD, so that just gets that prioritized. And I really wrote it up instead of asking you guys because we are seeing, like I said, the slight performance degradation in Angular 1.5 with the new lifecycle. And going into production, I wanted to see if it would work, but I can't. So I'd like to get this done. We shouldn't be doing it anyway because basically Angular feels that the scope method is a debugging method. So it's not something we should really be using in production.
It's for tools like ng-stats and the ng-batarang and stuff like that.
Yeah. So there's the TD. Yeah.
Cool. Sorry. So, what do you want to do first? Error handling or Angular? So Angular, that's probably be 15 minutes. Is that going to be enough time?
No.
Okay.
But what I was going to say is let's put it to vote. Last time we came up with best practices, we had 2 or 3 people sit down and go through it and then put it up as a doc for review. Everybody put their ideas on. How do we want to do it? I mean, we also had this idea of brown bag sessions. So really, I would just like to say, if we're going to discuss this in the 15 minutes, let's just discuss how we want to plan getting the document going. I don't care how we get it done. We can't get it done in a meeting though. So, and it's not something we're going to know up front.
Yeah, so we did the last round of updates.
I'm sorry, you broke up. Say again. Hello?
Yeah, hang on. I think we're good. When we did the last round of best practice stuff, we were a much bigger UI team, and it was, I think, 4 or 5 people sitting on Hangouts a couple hours at a time, with some quite a bit of mudflinging around. So we're a team of 7, I think, 7.5 if you count Rob. And so it would be possible for the 7.5 people to sit down and hash it out. I'm wondering if that is going to create more conflict than needed. And I'm wondering if it's, if we want to just get everybody in a room and do it, I think we can certainly do that. I'm wondering also if maybe 2 people that are interested in doing it sit down, put together a proposal, bring that proposal to a meeting, and then everybody kind of work through that proposal, kind of like we did last time. Is there anybody that's particularly interested in putting together these best practices? Or on the other side, is there anybody that doesn't really want to be that close to that?
I'm interested in helping.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously interested in having a voice, but I don't necessarily feel too strongly about being part of that first draft round. I could go either way.
I can go either way.
Yeah.
I'm interested in being converted and make sure that I'm on the same page. What's the time frame? I guess is the better question. Justin?
Did you ask what's the time frame?
What's the time frame?
Angular upgrade should hopefully be done either end of this week or end of next week, depending on automation. So we'll have 1.5 stuff available as soon as that goes in. If we start using features,
So maybe one of the things that we need to do then is start with our current best practices and go through those and identify what has changed or what might not make sense anymore, rather than trying to start from scratch. And then see if we can pull in kind of with the new shiny features that we have in 1.5, what of those bits do we want to be really embracing? Because I think in a lot of ways we could potentially do nothing, right? I mean, we could use our current best practices and keep moving forward. Obviously, there are a few new things, and there may be some things in the old documents that are now not as relevant. So I would encourage us to make sure that we're deprecating those best practices that we used to have, and then make sure we're introducing the new one. I mean, we can maybe sit down and hash some of this out next UI meeting, so we have everybody around, and then from there we may be able to figure out, because it may not be as much work as it was last time. Because from last time we were basically starting from scratch. We pulled in a couple of the popular style guides from Todd Amato and John Papa, and kind of went through those lists and picked and pulled what we liked and what we didn't, and then added our own ideas in there. And maybe we can do that with what we currently have, and then build from there.
Yeah, I like that idea. Start with our current ones and then rip them apart, and then any fallout we can add other tasks to.
I mean, personally, I think that we all should probably spend some time in general with those style guides. I saw that Justin out there with the different recommendations.
For 1.5.
Yeah, for 1.5. I started briefly looking at it. I haven't had time to go through it in detail, but I think there's value in that in general for
And
everyone.
1.5 is the biggest change we've seen. It's the least incremental change that we've done since probably 2 or 1.3.
So I think in general, everyone should allocate some time to go through that and also go through breaking changes and whatnot. That's why Justin had sent a message out asking us to all kind of comment how we want to do better with the topic. So I started briefly going through it, so I did start going through kind of what he was putting in there. And in my brush with it, I mean, there's clearly a lot to be absorbed.
Yep.
And I think that it's important that we all do it so we're on the same page, not just from a style guide standpoint, but also the functionality being produced. I'm kind of interested, kind of hesitant to like raise my hand to like sign myself up, only from a timing standpoint. But I am interested in it.
I think because of the significance of this topic, it would be great to have at least get this conversation going in one full UI meeting, like dedicate the whole meeting to this conversation. And from there, kind of figure out, I mean, maybe there are 2 or 3 questions that come up, or a dozen questions, and we can maybe delegate the questions across different people and, come back with proposals the following week.
And I would preface with, we should all send, allocate, usually allocated 3 hours of time, 4 hours of time to go through.
Homework for next week.
So, yeah, it's homework before the next UI meeting.
Yep.
I think it's important for us all to do it, because I think it'll help us all be on the same page. Also, kind of understand what is this piece that Justin's kind of dealing with. And
Hopefully make the meeting more productive too, so not spending so much familiarizing.
Can you speak up a little bit? I couldn't hear the last bit.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not speaking, like, so that might be a good idea too, because we can spend less time ramping up and kind of really hit the ground running and utilize that hour or however much we block off to the fullest.
I think the homework is important to make sure we're all on the same page. So,
If that's the case, I would propose, because this was already moved UI meeting, which means next week is the UI meeting.
Yeah.
And because of where we're at in PC 13, we should probably do it for the next one, which would be November 9th.
okay.
Does anybody know if they're going to be out on vacation November 9th? Have any planned illnesses?
Right around Veterans Day.
Adrian's out on the 10th, so you're in. Looks like Adrian. On your own.
Okay, yeah.
No, I'll be here. Which day is Thanksgiving?
That's it. I don't know.
3 weeks later.
I just wanted to make sure, I don't know if it's Thanksgiving. That's totally
End of the month.
Okay, cool, we're good.
Christmas, right? That's right around the 9th. November?
Yeah, somewhere around. I know, I'm sure.
Let's see. Cool. But yeah, I think familiarizing is really step one for a lot. I think everyone's loaded right now. So I think highlighting that and making sure we all spend the time is key.
I think there's gonna be, we're gonna, by then, hopefully we'll have all of the list stuff wrapped up. We'll have these upgrades wrapped up and in the bag. And some of that dust can settle and we can kind of focus on this stuff through the end of the year and then really ready to go for beginning of next year.
For me, I'm just gonna, what I'll do is, for me anyways, is I'll just give it an hour a day or something, just so that way I can really start cranking through it and, have time to move on.
Yep.
Good approach, given the time frame. I started, it's just,
Oh, yeah, no, it's very difficult.
And the style guide stuff is actually really good too. What he had, I believe he gave us, I think that the changes coming from 1.5, breaking changes, and then the style guide.
And also, let's refamiliarize ourselves with our current style guide documentation. It's a little bit all over the map, so maybe part of this we can use to pull it together and make it a little more cohesive. I think JS best practices, Angular best practices, they're like separate documents. It's a little tricky to figure out where a certain best practice might fall.
Damn.
Cool. All right. So the last one is error handling, login, displaying best practices.
Crucial, basically, an extension of the conversation you and I had, Kyle, where we're just logging kind of useless errors to the console and not really doing anything meaningful with it. So just want to figure out some practices around that. So.
Yeah, we don't get any feedback from production unless a customer actually picks up the phone and says, hey, there's an error here, and this is the message that I'm getting. So we actually, and I mean, yeah, we have a lot of automation, we have a lot of testing and whatnot, but we're not actually seeing when those dollar logs are hitting. We're not getting those. So,
Dollar log is a no-op in production.
well, exactly. So there's a question about whenever we use $log.error, should we be hooking up to some sort of error logging service that can actually give us some production feedback of what the hell is going on? Because we may be able to anticipate a cluster being down even days before a client calls it in and reports it. If we start getting queries that are failing and the customer kind of gets distracted or lunch kicks in or whatever and they get up and leave and they forget about it, we may not realize until it's too late that half of our customers are in a blackout state, where if we have a simple front end logging service of some sort, we can actually get that real-time information.
And I think the problem, we had talked about this before, how many wanted to do something similar, send all of our errors to some service so that we could watch them.
Yeah.
We're gonna have a problem now though with the split of justifying the cost of some service.
Yep.
We could have our own service.
No, I mean, there was maybe an idea at one point to tap into our own events system that has the risk that if we are in a blackout state, we may not. Obviously, those events would suddenly stop. And I don't know in terms of scale. I don't know what we're even looking at here in terms of errors. I would like to think that we're in a small enough scale of actual errors being logged that we can probably run at least some free trials or some low-level monitoring trials to get started and potentially prove the value there. And it may be that after 3 months, there is no real value there. We're getting a few logs here and there. They don't mean much, and we move on. And at that point, then what do we do when we actually have these error errors. Instead of logging to the console, should we be pushing that error to the view so the user sees it?
Well, we can already do this. New Relic, you can push errors to New Relic.
Yeah. Are we using New Relic now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean that's I think the direction that we were talking about here is tapping into maybe something that we already have. But I guess maybe the takeaway here though is that $log.error is and it's in the best practice $log.error is probably an anti-pattern for us. I struggle to see what we're getting out of it, and it seems like a dead-end error handler. We might as well have no error handler as far as I can tell. Just let the error fail silently. But then the question is, do we want to push it to the view? Do we want to notify the customer that this request failed? If it continues to fail, call such and such a phone number or something like that.
But I just do, there a bug came down the wire where you were getting 500s, and when in our global error handler, if you didn't have any pre-definition from the module itself, no error came up.
Yep.
So expressions just stopped altogether. So I ended up adding in a global error message for 500 errors.
Mm-hmm.
So that way, if that happens and there's nothing, no other information about the error, at least prompts the user to refresh the browser and keeps down the context.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, so that, I think we should maybe update best practices to say, let's not use $log.error anymore, and let's work with product management to get messaging, proper messaging under certain circumstances. And maybe what's in place already is more than enough. And our custom error handlers that just go to $log can just be.
My only concern as it stands right now is that every error code from HTTP is not handled.
Yeah.
That really should not be the case. It needs to be consistent.
Yeah.
Now that I say it, I haven't pushed out my error. Maybe I'll consider
So
handling all cases.
you're basically catching 500s on a global level, and I'm wondering, like, when we get 409s and stuff like that, I think right now we're handling those manually everywhere.
And sometimes the responses come back with the message, and the global error handler will handle the response for 9.
Yeah, and there's also UUID changes that have been put in place for if a certain backend errors come up. They can provide a, kind of an identifier of the error to the customer. But that said, if there's no information, there are error codes that could potentially be hidden and not announced to the customer.
Yep.
And that's the problem. I mean, as soon as we start having issues, it's better to really push it up.
So maybe out of this, we remove log.error, basically say that's an anti-pattern, and at the same time we need a tech debt to investigate. I mean, right now you've got a bug ticket, so that's a good place to start. But maybe we need a tech debt to really work with product management to get a full sense of what type of error messaging do we want to handle under XYZ circumstances.
Yeah, I think it's important.
And it may involve back-end work as well, because we may have gaps in which services provide response codes and which ones don't. We can fill in some of those gaps too.
The thing is, right now, I've faced this issue before where error handling is kind of an afterthought.
Yep.
Where you'll have, if you show your product, then your customers have this issue. They have no way of telling you what their issue is.
Right.
So it hides problems, or it makes it so that the customer can clearly convey their problem.
Right.
So I think it is important. Good. Just one thing, way back, Justin already highlighted, was that there was discussion about using a third party. It doesn't look like it's that expensive. I mean,
No,
error exception, which is like $59 per month for 20,000 errors a day. And
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, on the scale that we're operating right now, it's probably a drop in the bucket. But if we're already hooked up to New Relic and stuff like that, we may already be paying for solutions that we're just not taking advantage of.
Well, yeah, I sent the link in the chat. You have to be paying for the SPA monitoring. which I don't think we're doing.
For New Relic specifically.
Yes.
I don't think,
Yeah, and I mean, that's one route we could look into. So I think maybe a third part of this is continuing to look into some sort of real-time monitoring feedback, whether it's New Relic or another third party, because they're really, at our scale right now, they're not expensive. I mean, we shouldn't be throwing 20,000 errors a day. If we are, we have serious problems.
and that's,
Or we have serious customers. That would be a better problem to have.
Yeah, I suppose one error gets conflated across 20,000 customers, yeah, then we can afford it.
Yeah.
So-
Or $59.
I think this is an important step. for us. Improving our quality while also ensuring that if we are quality, that it is highly to us, we can be able to.
Being a little more reactive would be better. I feel like, well, reactive is not the right word. We want to be less reactive. We want to be more proactive. Because right now it's kind of like the customer calls and then we go ahead and respond. And we should really be responding with the tools and information that we have access to.
It's scary, but sometimes the user won't even know that something's messed up. And they just keep looking through.
Yeah.
They expect
And it just keeps breaking.
They're like,
It
"What is
breaks,
this?"
it gets
Or it
worse
doesn't
and
break,
worse
it
and
causes
worse.
side effects.
Yeah.
Even worse. And then- So, yeah.
Well, I think that will do it. It's convenient.
We got to run a ton of stuff.
You did.
Yeah.
You did a good job. I said it was gonna be a good UI meeting. We believe.
We believe you now.
That's good.
We're incredible.
Chris just got